What's up, guys? This is Matt Singer from ScreenCrush.com. When I was a kid, there were 3 Star Wars movies. When I was a teenager, there were 6. I'm very old. Now, there are 11, and Disney plans to release a new one every single year until the end of time. In 100 years, after the release of Episode 58 and Max Rebo, A Star Wars Story, it will seem quaint that we bothered to rank a mere 11 Star Wars films, but for the sake of posterity, here we go. Now, the only rule for inclusion on this list was theatrical films only. It didn't seem fair to compare Rogue One to Caravan of Courage, an Ewok Adventure. Although we could have, Caravan did play in a few European theaters after all. No, these are specifically the 11 theatrical Star Wars features, from worst to first. We can rank the TV stuff another time, but here's a preview. Number 1, the Star Wars Holiday Special. Number 2, everything else. Doesn't really matter. Okay, here we go. Number 11, Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Less of a standalone film than a big screen pilot for an animated series, The Clone Wars boasts some of the ugliest animation of any theatrical feature I have ever seen. It's also put me to sleep on several occasions. It made some positive additions to the canon, like Anakin's Padawan Ahsoka Tano, but it also gave us the Truman Capote-inspired Zero the Hutt.
I like the sound of that.
Matt! Yes. Number 10, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Okay, now we get into the serious debate. Which is worse, Attack of the Clones or Phantom Menace? Now, I vote for Attack of the Clones. Hayden Christensen is actually a downgrade from Jake Lloyd. Yippee! The story is impossible to follow, and all of the Jedi come across like total morons who can't figure out the very obvious bad guy pulling all of their strings. Psst, it's Palpatine. Also, I happen to really love sand.
I don't like sand.
So this movie is very upsetting to me. Number 9, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Now, there is a kernel of an interesting idea in The Phantom Menace. A monstrous politician manipulates crises to consolidate power and destroy democracy. Not bad. It's just too bad that kernel is buried at the bottom of a bucket of very stale popcorn full of trade disputes, Jar Jar Binks pratfalls, and those darn midichlorians. At least the pod race and the Darth Maul fight at the end deliver. Number 8, Solo, A Star Wars Story. Solid ending aside, this is basically Han Solo, babies. At times, an even more prequel-y prequel than the Star Wars prequels that everyone already hates. There's tons of needless explanations about Han's backstory, confusing cameos, and fan service galore. Number 7, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Sith is definitely the clear standout among the prequels, although that's sort of like saying an intense case of the dry heaves is better than the 2 other times when you vomited all over the bathroom. Anakin turning into Vader turning into Frankenstein plays as silly, not tragic. Still, the final scene of Vader and the Emperor observing the Death Star is legitimately chilling. Plus, blockbusters are usually so bland and happy, you gotta kinda respect one that ends with almost all the main characters dying or becoming puppets of an evil emperor. Number 6, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. I respect that Lucasfilm tried to make a darker Star Wars movie. There are a few effective dramatic moments, along with some striking visuals, like the opening shot, which looks like the typical Imperial Star Destroyer zooming overhead, but turns out to be the rings of an alien planet seen from a skewed angle. But director Gareth Edwards is more comfortable with the monstrous than the mortal, and the result is Rogue One, which lacks the lovable characters that are a Star Wars trademark. Number 5, Return of the Jedi. Sure, the Ewoks are overly cuddly, but compared to some of the obnoxious creatures that popped up in the prequels,
My tongue, rabbit.
They're downright Shakespearean. Return of the Jedi has almost no plot. It's basically just Luke and his company rescue Han from Jabba the Hutt, and then they all take down the new Death Star, but it builds nicely off of all the character development from the first 2 films, particularly between Luke and Vader and the Emperor. The backdoor protagonist of the series is Anakin Skywalker, and his tender final moments with his son are the emotional core of the film. Number 4, Star Wars: The Force Awakens. After 3 middling to nightmarish prequels, Force Awakens was an improbable return to form for the franchise. Now, you could argue that the film too closely mirrored the premise and structure of A New Hope, but you could also argue that replacing some of the most famous characters in film history with 4 brand new leads was no walk in the park. Force Awakens reminded viewers what we loved about the original series, while making fans excited for the future. Next up, number 3, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. This sequel dared to go full Empire. Heroes young and old are trapped in their most desperate situation yet. An idealistic hero, Luke Skywalker, turns into a broken shell of his former self. Somehow this darkest of Star Wars sequels, though, is also one of the lightest, with great bits involving Oscar Isaac's Poe Dameron crank calling the Empire.
Hi, I'm holding for General Hux.
This is Hux.
And Luke drinking that weird milk straight from the lactating alien. Okay, time for number 2, The Empire Strikes Back. Now we get into the other serious debate. Which is better, A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back? I kind of feel like it's a matter of personal taste that ultimately comes down to what you prefer. Old innovation or kind of precise refinement. Clearly, my order here shows what I value, but they're both excellent. And the number 1 Star Wars movie? Okay, fine, it's Star Wars.
What?
The original, still the best. 40 years later, the interplay between the characters, the exuberant sense of adventure, and that final, incredible Death Star run have yet to be equaled. Boy, how they have tried to equal it, mostly by just recycling and copying that same thing again and again and again. I guess this isn't the most scientific determinant of quality in a movie, but here's how I look at it. If you put all of these movies in front of me right now, the one I would watch is Star Wars. Well, that's my ranking. What's yours? I would like to know, so leave us a comment below and tell us. And for Screen Crush, I'm Matt Singer.